There's a kind of destruction that leaves no bruises, no police reports, no visible scars. From the outside, everything looks normal. You show up to work, you answer messages, you function. People assume you're fine, but inside, something has been quietly dismantled. Not all at once, not dramatically, piece by piece, day by day, so slowly that you don't even notice it happening. Until one morning you look at your life and realize you don't recognize the man you've become. This is not physical harm, this is psychological erosion, and it is far more common than anyone wants to admit. It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't explode. It whispers, it pauses, it sighs. It communicates through tone, timing, and subtle shifts that never quite rise to the level of something is wrong. There is no single moment you can point to and say, that's when it started, because it didn't start. It accumulated. A half-second delay before responding, a look of disinterest where there used to be admiration, a joke that lands just a little too close to humiliation, a correction that feels unnecessary but somehow leaves you smaller. Each moment is harmless on its own. That's why it works. Men are taught to look for obvious threats, conflict, anger, disrespect that can be named. But this kind of damage hides in normality, in relationships that look fine from the outside. No screaming, no chaos, just a slow shift from warmth to neutrality, and from neutrality to something colder. Here is the uncomfortable truth most men never say out loud. Your sense of self is deeply affected by how the woman closest to you sees you. Yes, you're told to be internally validated. You're told your confidence should come from within. You're told to be unshakable. And in theory, that sounds right. But in reality, intimate relationships don't work that way. The woman you're bonded to becomes a mirror, and what you see reflected back shapes how you see yourself. When she looks at you with admiration, you feel capable. When she laughs at your jokes, you feel sharp. When she trusts your decisions, you feel competent. When she desires you, you feel like a man. This isn't weakness, this is attachment. This is how human bonding functions. But what builds you can also dismantle you, because admiration doesn't always disappear loudly. Sometimes it just fades, slowly, gradually, almost politely. The way she used to look at you changes. The way she responds changes. The energy shifts. You don't notice at first because nothing bad happens. There's no accusation, no argument, just a quiet downgrade. Amazing becomes fine. Fine becomes tolerable. Tolerable becomes disappointing, and you absorb it all without realizing you're absorbing it. You start adjusting, speaking less, explaining more, trying harder. You don't know why, only that something feels off. You remember how it used to feel when she admired you. You remember that version of yourself, and without consciously deciding to, you start trying to earn it back. This is where the real damage begins, because the moment admiration becomes conditional, it turns into a lever. Early approval created a bond. Withdrawal creates hunger, and now you're working to restore a feeling she controls without ever agreeing to give her that power. You do more, you give more, you perform more, and the harder you try, the worse it gets. Not because effort is bad, but because effort in this context signals something dangerous. You've accepted a lower position. You're no longer the man being admired. You're the man seeking admiration, and that inversion quietly kills whatever attraction was left. This is how masculine polarity collapses. At the beginning, there was grounding, direction, presence. You weren't perfect, but you were centered. She responded to that. But as respect erodes, so does polarity. You become reactive instead of steady, anxious instead of calm, approval-seeking instead of self-assured. And here's the part that traps men the deepest. You don't realize it's happening because none of it feels severe enough to confront. If you tried to explain it, you'd sound unreasonable. She sighed. She rolled her eyes. She corrected me. None of it sounds like a problem. So you dismiss it. You adapt. You lower your expectations of how you're treated without ever consciously deciding to. This is psychological conditioning. Small withdrawals of respect, repeated over time, rewire how you see yourself. You stop asking who you are and start measuring who you are through her reactions. Her disappointment becomes your self-assessment. Her indifference becomes your self-image. And that's how a man with a career, skills, friends, and competence can slowly start feeling empty, hesitant, and unsure of himself without anything obvious being wrong. The destruction doesn't announce itself. It blends into daily life. And that is exactly why so many men don't notice it until years later, when they're already standing inside the result. Once this erosion takes hold, something deeper begins to break. A man's initiative. Initiative isn't motivation. It's not willpower. It's the quiet belief that your actions matter, that if you try, something good can come from it. Initiative is built on an internal assumption of competence. evidence. And when that assumption is slowly undermined, action collapses. A man who feels admired takes risks naturally. He speaks up. He moves forward. He trusts his judgment. But a man who has absorbed months or years of subtle disappointment begins to hesitate, not because he's lazy, because his psychology has been trained to expect failure. Why lead if your decisions are always questioned? Why speak if your words land flat? Why act if effort never restores respect? This is learned helplessness, but it doesn't come from obvious punishment. It comes from inconsistency, from approval that used to be there and now appears randomly, sometimes granted, sometimes withheld, with no clear rule. That uncertainty is what trains the nervous system to stop trying. At this stage, something dangerous happens internally. The man stops seeing the relationship as the problem and starts seeing himself as the problem. He doesn't think, this dynamic is unhealthy. He thinks, something is wrong with me. Because from his perspective, the evidence feels overwhelming. The woman closest to him seems unimpressed, disengaged, disappointed, and since she matters emotionally, her perception begins to feel more real than any external success. This is why a man can be respected at work and hollow at home. In public, he may have authority. People listen. His decisions carry weight. His competence is acknowledged. But at home, that version of himself disappears. The tone shifts. The respect dissolves. The same man who leads meetings is corrected on trivial details. The same man who is trusted professionally is treated as if he can't get basic things right. That contrast is devastating because at some level, he knows public respect is conditional. Titles can vanish. Status can change. But home is supposed to be different. Home is where you're known, not evaluated, where you're accepted, not audited. And when home becomes the place where you feel smallest, public success starts to feel like a costume instead of an identity. The humiliation isn't loud, it's private, casual, delivered in moments no one else sees. And because there are no witnesses, there's no clear villain, just doubt. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe she's right. Maybe I really am not enough. This is how the man internalizes her evaluation as truth. He stops asking whether the treatment is fair and starts assuming it must be accurate. Her disappointment becomes his self-concept. Her neutrality becomes his identity. And slowly, without realizing it, he begins delivering the same contempt to himself that she once delivered externally. At this point, the relationship doesn't even need to be actively damaging anymore. The damage has been absorbed. It runs on autopilot. Even if she says nothing, he feels judged. Even if she leaves the room, her voice stays. This is why so many men try to fix themselves and fail. They go to therapy for motivation. They read books about confidence. They try to optimize their habits. But none of it sticks because the source of the damage isn't internal weakness. It's an unresolved relational dynamic that trained the man to see himself as insufficient. You cannot rebuild self-worth while living inside a system that erodes it daily. And yet, many men stay, not because they want to, but because the same process that broke them also weakened their ability to leave. Confidence eroded, initiative collapsed, self-trust disappeared. The trap becomes nearly perfect. The relationship damages the man's psychology. The damage removes his capacity to escape the relationship. From the outside, everything still looks normal. Two adults, stable life, no drama, no obvious abuse. But internally, the man is shrinking, retreating, going quiet in his own life. And the most dangerous part is this: he believes it's his fault. That belief keeps him stuck far longer than any argument ever could. Here's the line most people avoid drawing. Leaving is justified when the climate is destructive. Abuse, chronic disrespect, infidelity, addiction without accountability, ongoing cruelty, a partner who refuses repair. In those cases, staying isn't loyalty, it's self-betrayal. But leaving a decent relationship because it isn't a fantasy is different. That isn't empowerment, that's confusion dressed as confidence. The shift that changes everything is internal. Stop treating emotions as evidence. Emotions are information, not verdicts. Discomfort can mean growth. Boredom can mean stability. Anxiety can come from unresolved wiring, not a wrong partner. When a man learns to regulate his internal state, he stops outsourcing his self-worth to someone else's mood. And when he stops performing for approval, something powerful happens. Respect either returns or the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Support does not mean self-erasure. If you are constantly trying to fix how someone feels about you, you've already lost your frame. And when a man loses his frame, attraction bleeds out of the relationship. No amount of effort can replace self-respect. Repair, when it's real, looks like this: replacing fantasy with agreements, naming the actual issue instead of blaming a vague feeling, sharing the load instead of keeping score, building rituals that create connection, real conversations, shared goals, time without phones, and the ability to sit with ordinary life without calling it failure. And responsibility matters. If you feel dissatisfied, stop running and start examining your suitcase. What expectations did you pack without realizing it? What did culture promise that no human can deliver? What trauma patterns are being replayed as intuition? What comparison habits are quietly poisoning gratitude? Peace isn't found by swapping partners like outfits. Peace is built by changing your relationship with reality. And men, this is your boundary. Do not perform for someone's mood. Do not become a servant trying to earn peace. Be consistent. Communicate clearly. Lead yourself, but never trade your identity for approval. The moment you abandon yourself to keep her, you create the emptiness she will later blame on you. Some men rebuild inside the relationship. Some rebuild after leaving. Both require the same foundation: sane expectations, active gratitude, real standards, and the courage to tell the difference between normal weather and a destructive climate. If this perspective hit a nerve, that's normal. Real clarity feels sharp before it feels freeing. Like the video, if it gave you clarity, share it with a man who's quietly shrinking. Subscribe for more deep psychological breakdowns. Stay aware, stay grounded.